Go ahead and do
All
your
right.
10-second count.
Ready to go? All right,
Yes.
we're going to start. This is the Painesville Township Board of Zoning Appeals. We're going to call the meeting to order. We normally start with a pledge of allegiance, but because of the virtual nature of this and no visible flag, we'll forego that until we get to meet in person again. So at this time, I'm going to ask Rachel to do the roll call of the attendees, please, the members of the board.
Okay, Dave and Zara,
Here.
Ken,
Here.
Randy,
Here.
Dave Lindros, who is absent, and Chairman.
Here. Okay, let the record show the 4 members who are in attendance. And then we'll give our witness a few minutes here to swear him in. I'll have Jason explain that to him. Hopefully he can understand it. Hey, Jason, is he still here?
Yeah.
Would it be improper while we're waiting for him? Well, we haven't opened the regular meeting, and I guess you have to acknowledge the minutes in the regular meeting, don't you? This is a public hearing now. So we'll wait.
Yeah, we should try to get the public hearing done and then do our regular meeting and approve them then.
Okay. You were able to talk to him, Harley, just a minute ago?
He's calling. Give me one moment.
Okay, no problem. Glad we don't have a large agenda tonight.
Yeah.
That's what happens meeting by technology. Sometimes these things happen. You know, people can write a book when it's all over, you know.
Hey, I'm glad it's not me. It's all screwed up. Hey, Rich, while we're waiting, I want to ask you a question. That property over there near Dairy Queen, remember they wanted to put in a big storage thing over there? Has that gone anywhere?
Yeah. They have all their permits. They should, once they get their building permit from the county, they are good to go.
Oh, okay. Because I hadn't heard anything about it. I think I hear him now.
Sorry, I have to call him from my cell phone. Hi, Jay. You weren't able to connect? Did you dial the number? Okay. Oh, Okay. So let's, what phone number did you dial? Give me the phone number that you have written down.
Can't you put him on speaker?
The, uh-huh. Yes. Mm-hmm. You hit pound and then the pin and then pound again? Okay. 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 Give me one moment. Let me here, hold on. Jason, would putting him on speakerphone be sufficient if the sound is muffled, or does his voice have to be clear?
I mean, as long as we can understand what's being said, I don't see how that's any different than if he was on his own phone.
Okay, all right. So Jay, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone and we're going to see if your voice and the words that you're saying come across clearly through the computer. And try to solve the problem that way, okay? Okay, one moment. Okay, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can the members
I
hear
heard
me?
yes.
All right, so we're gonna try to move forward this way.
Jason, do you want to try and talk to him and explain what you're trying to do, swearing him in? See if he gets that.
Sure.
Can you hear the
Um,
members speaking, Jay?
Yes, little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so proceedings in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals are considered quasi-judicial in nature. And essentially what that means is the decisions of the board can be appealed to Common Pleas Court. If that were to happen, the record of the proceedings tonight would be transmitted to the Common Pleas Court, and they would then use that in helping determine the appeal. So for that reason, anybody giving testimony either for or against the variance request has to be sworn in. So before we do that, could you actually please identify your first and last name as well as your home address?
Okay, my name is Jayesh Patel, and my home address is 5615 Indian Ridge Drive, Pennsville, Ohio.
Okay, and then could you please, and I'll take your word for it because I know you're on the phone, but please raise your right hand. And do you
Okay.
solemnly swear or affirm that the statements you're going to make tonight shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, witness is sworn in. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Rachel to read the request case 21 BZA 01, please.
Okay, applicant Hema J1 LLC filed a variance application for property located at 880 Oakwood Boulevard. The request is to allow a 31-foot by 15-foot pole building to maintain a 0-foot setback from the main dwelling in violation of section 15.02C5, which requires a minimum separation of 10 feet between accessory structures and a dwelling.
Okay, I see no error in the zoning inspector requiring a variance for this as cited in our zoning resolution 1502C5. So Jay, I'm going to ask you to tell us what you want to do, but what you've done and your reason for it, please.
Well, I did it for the storage unit for the property. And I tried to, I tried to call the city of Painesville to pull out the permit, but they said they don't do it. And I misunderstood and I did it for the storage unit. And I never did anything wrong before in my teacher life. I never did it. This is my first mistake. I did it.
Is that clear to the board? What was, Jay called Painesville City to ask about the permit, and when they informed him that they wouldn't be the entity to process the permit, he misunderstood and thought that no permit was required, not that he was in Painesville Township and needed a permit from us.
Yes.
Rich, have you had conversations with this gentleman at all?
Well, a very, very short conversation. It did not have, my conversation with him did not directly have anything to do with this particular variance request. There was a different issue that I contacted him for.
So how did this come about that this is in front of us now then? Did you discover that it was already there?
Well, let's just say that in my travels as zoning inspector, I have had dealings with this particular piece of property since before Mr. Patel became the owner. And in driving by, I observed what I saw was a new structure on the property, which I did not recognize as having been permitted. And I checked our records and found that it was not permitted. There were a couple other things going on, and Harley was charged, I think, with investigating another property that Mr. Patel owned. And I mentioned to her that I am not familiar with a permit being issued for the new building, which appeared at 880 Oakwood Drive. And Harley took it from there, and we discovered that Mr. Patel had erroneously built the building without a zoning permit and also erroneously built the building without a Lake County building permit. So there is a problem with the location of the pole building on the property. Number one, due to the fact that it is right next to and has basically less than 1 foot clearance from the main building on the property, which is a violation for a accessory structure. But at the same time, as I was looking at the overheads, I had difficulty recognizing that the rear line clearance meets our standards in our requirements, and I also failed to recognize that the right sideline clearance would meet our sideline clearance standards. So I know that the original variance request is only for the distance between the main building and the new accessory structure. But I am slightly concerned that even if we granted this variance, the structure may still be in violation due to the lack of proper rear line clearance and right sideline clearance.
Yeah, I'm looking at the overhead here that someone has marked up. And it looks like 6 foot side yard and 6 foot rear. Does that sound about right?
That is what the applicant stated on the application. The requirements are 5-foot rear and 5-foot sideline.
Yeah, he's showing 6 foot on here, so I don't know if that's accurate or not. Has anyone taken a look at it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I applied the Lake County GIS system measurement tool to the property, and I am having difficulty verifying that the 5-foot rear line and 5-foot sideline is properly being observed. Typically, we do not require property owners to do a survey, but I think in this case, there is a question on whether this building will comply with the rear line clearance and the sideline clearance. That's all I can say. And Mr. Patel has acknowledged that he made a mistake in not applying for a zoning permit, and I appreciate that fully.
Yeah, this is my first mistake. I never did it look like I got 6 property in Pennsylvania Township. I never did it look like that. But this is coronavirus, and somehow I just understood from Lake County.
And I might add that even though Mr. Patel has not only failed to obtain a zoning certificate from Painesville Township, he has failed to obtain a building permit from the county. And under the circumstances, I believe Harley has advised him not to proceed with an application for a building permit until we make some sense out of his zoning situation first. And that is very solid advice. I support that.
Okay. That was going to be my question. I don't know if there's electrical or plumbing or anything in here that would have to be inspected by the building inspector. It's hard to ask for another variance if we don't know where he is with the sidelines. Is that his responsibility to get that surveyed and see where he actually is at this point?
Well, it is certainly not the township's responsibility. If we have reason to question, I believe it would be the property owner's responsibility to satisfy our question.
Okay. All right. So, board members, does anyone else have questions of Mr. Patel on the board?
I have one question. Is this owner occupied or is this rental property?
That's the rental property.
So you don't live there?
No, sir.
So I guess my question then is, why do we need all the extra space for storage? That's kind of what the reason is.
I got the 30 property in Pennsville and Pennsville Township all together, and I need the storage unit to store it, the stuff inside. All the material I have to put inside. I don't need no plumbing, no electric, nothing, no plaster, nothing. Just for storage for my lumber and all the stuff. I used to have it behind the building, but I don't want it to look bad in a neighborhood. That's why I just, try to build up the garage storage unit for the storage. There's nothing access to any living thing or anything. I'm not do that anymore.
I have a question for Mr. Patel. Did you have a contractor build this, or how was it constructed?
Well, it's constructed. I had it look like, I had a 30 property. I did it by myself, and I know I built up just the 3 garage in a Painesville, not even last year, looked like 4 months ago. That's why I know that I got the drawing how to I do it the structure for the building. I did the 42-inch deep. I know that how to dig it up, the deepest, the barn hole. I just built up the 2 garage myself. Look like 15 by 22 in the 218 East Prospect Street and 224 East Prospect Street. And I pull out the permit and I got the drawing too. That's why I know the pretty much how to build up the barn garage.
Okay, so I guess I need clarification. Mr. Sullivan asked the question. This is rental property. Now, am I to understand that this is used to store all the materials you use for your other rental properties, or is that just for this piece of property itself?
No, this is the property for sale, but not all rental property. But in Painesville, they require if I is a vacant property more than 1 year, I have to build up a car garage.
So what are you storing in here again in this building?
So that building, I had the plywood. I got this look like the plumbing stuff. Look like tiles, drywall. The electric parts.
And I go back to my question: are these parts for all your other rental properties, or is that for this piece of property?
What is this, sir?
The things you're storing in there, are these things you use on all your other rental properties?
Yes, sir.
So it's being kind of used for a commercial storage area.
That's a non-conforming use.
Yeah. Well, as I see it, there's a couple things we can do here. I don't think this variance request is going to cover everything that we're looking at here. Like Ken said, it's a non-conforming use. We're not sure of the side yard, rear yard clearance. I'm not sure how the board would want to handle this. If they want to continue it and have the applicant go back and put together the correct application for everything that he needs to come in front of this board, that's kind of what I would like to see, I guess. Rich, Harley, you have any feelings on that? We're dealing with other things here other than just the distance from the main dwelling.
Mr. Chairman, that was my fear, is that the distance from the main dwelling isn't the only thing in looking at the overheads of the property that could possibly be called into question. I don't believe it's wise for the board to grant variances that aren't all encompassing or are only partially effective in dealing with a situation on a particular property. So I would be more comfortable seeing an actual survey laying out where the main building is, where the new addition is relative to the property lines, and then we would know, we would have a better idea of what variances are really required to legitimize the placement of the new building on the particular premises. When it comes to the use of the building, I didn't realize it, but it is sounding like we might have to include a use variance, because the described use sounds like exactly what the chairman said, a commercialized use of the property by a commercial landlord.
That's the way I
So,
see it. Yeah.
yeah.
I do have one more question, and Mr. Chairman, either for you or this may be for legal counsel as well, but if we're looking, and in particular, if we're looking at a conditional use, but then if this board granted, I'm thinking hypothetically, we granted approval on this variance, which there's a reason there's a separation between the accessory building and the house. But if we were to grant that variance that it's attached to the house and approve a conditional use for storage of materials, is there any liability to this board should something happen, that accessory structure catches fire and the house burns down and it has occupants in it that because it's a rental? Is there any recourse against the board should we make that decision for the variance and conditional use? Does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah, I follow the question. And I want to say no, there wouldn't be any. If anything, the recourse would be against the property owner. If it were the renters that suffered damage. But like most things, I prefer to look into that and give a firm answer because I wouldn't. My gut tells me no, there'd be no liability for the BZA.
What about the township at large?
I don't even think there. And in that case, you'd probably be dealing with political sovereign immunity. Even if there was something, they'd probably be covered under that blanket immunity. Usually when you're talking premise liability, there are no kind of outside parties that get pulled into that. It's property owner.
Okay, thank you, counsel.
All right, good question, Randy. What I would like to see from the board is probably a motion to continue this. And let's put the onus on the applicant to get a survey, see what his actual side yard, rear yard clearances are. I want to know exactly what he's storing in there in case, if we do look at a use variance. And if that's the case, I think we have the authority to go ahead, if we would do this at the next meeting or however long it takes them to get this together, to make sure there's nothing hazardous stored there, fuels, oils, anything like that.
No. Just a little stuff. No fuel, no gasoline, no nothing.
All right, we just want to make sure that's going to be in writing somewhere as part of a use variance or something. But I think it would be neglect for this board to go ahead and move on this right now with the questions that need to be answered.
Tom, before we get to a continuance, one thing I'd like to be, I guess, to bring to Rich and Harley's attention, maybe, should the applicant come back here down the road to apply for the variance and the conditional use, at whatever hearing that might be, I would like some input from our fire chief on the construction of this property and It's the lack of setback from the main dwelling and the ability of the department to what issues they may have in dealing with that property.
Okay, good point.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I should point out that when we get to a point where the applicant would make an application to the building department for a building permit, the fire department will be consulted at that point in time.
Okay.
But there is nothing preventing the board from insisting that before you make any further decision on the case, you have input from the fire department to assist you in making the best decision you can make for the benefit of the township.
Now, is that something that that you would request or we would request it, and who's responsible for getting the fire department to look into it then?
You can direct the zoning staff to make a request of the fire department on your behalf, and we would be happy to do that.
Does that sound good, Ken?
Yeah, that would, I think for us, for this board to hear this, we need to have to address any concerns they have, because I'm a little bit concerned about the ability of the fire department to access that structure and the safety of anyone staying in that structure with that. That's that whole complex being on the side.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any other questions of the applicant? Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against the request? Just so we get legal here. So hearing everything we've heard, if someone would like to make a motion how we want to move forward with this?
Mr. Chairman, it's Ken. I'll make a motion to continue 21 BZA-01 to our next meeting.
Okay, continue with the requirements. What are we asking the applicant to do? Let's spell that out.
Revised application addressing the other potential clearance issues. We would like a survey of the property.
Okay, side yard and rear yard clearances. Okay.
Correct.
And then we want to ask someone from the zoning department to give us some guidance, request some guidance from the Painesville Township Fire Department.
Correct.
All right. And then as we understand it, Rich, you mentioned it a couple times. Once this is all finished, then he would have to go get a building permit. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Sullivan's motion, is the conditional use that we suspect would be required completely separate from this as a separate entity then?
Rich, does this require a conditional use permit? Or is it just a use variance that we put conditions?
It seems to me like we would be dealing with a use variance, not necessarily a conditional use permit.
Yeah, because I'm looking at section 12, and I don't think something like this, I don't see where it comes under conditional use permit, but we would be able to put conditions on the use itself and the use variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Rachel, you want to read that motion back so we're clear on it, please?
I forgot to unmute. Sorry. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we stop for a second though? I want to just be a little clearer on that whole comment with a use variance versus a conditional use. If it's a use variance, and let's just say this board were to approve that, there would be no ability to put a time duration on there. Wouldn't that become permanent to the property? Whereas on a conditional use variance, it always has a time attached to it.
Ken and members of the board, my understanding is when the Board of Zoning Appeals may approve a variance, it is the board's right to attach certain conditions to a variance. That would include a time limit or some kind of a action reaction kind of a condition that would accomplish some kind of control.
How does that differ then from a conditional use permit?
Pardon?
How would that differ from a conditional use permit then?
Well, in its classification, it's not a conditional use permit, which is required to be renewed or reviewed. It is a variance issued to use a property in a certain way under certain conditions for a specified period of time, which would not require review. But you know, as any permit issued by the Board of Zoning Appeals it is subject to revocation. if its conditions are violated.
Okay, Ken, does that answer your question?
Well, I hear what you're saying, Rich, but I guess maybe we need some legal help on that because I'm just looking at it as let's say Mr. Patel let's say everything goes the way he wants and he gets a variance to store these items he's planning on storing there, and he sells the property. Well, how would we even, if it's a conditional use variance, it would expire at the end of a certain period of time. But once he's storing it and he's using it, how would we have any ability to I mean, we wouldn't be monitoring that in any way.
Well, Ken, just to add to what Rich said, so a conditional use variance, that isn't something that we have in our zoning resolution. A conditional use is a use that is permitted in our zoning resolution, but conditionally. A use variance is for a use that is otherwise not permitted at all in that area. And
Okay.
so in that way, you are permitting this use through a variance and then adding any appropriate conditions. And so they're two separate methods of getting to almost the same
Okay.
result, except we expressly permit in our zoning resolution specific uses, but you have to apply for a conditional use in order to do these specific uses. So like the situation on, what was that, Hawthorne?
Yeah.
With the college kids,
Right.
that was a use variance that you guys placed a time limit on as well. Does that make any more sense?
So we, in effect, could put a time limit on that variance as a use variance.
Yes, okay. Which is exactly what you guys did in that other scenario.
Okay. Very good. You cleared that up for me.
Okay. You satisfied with that, Ken, then?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, Rachel, so if you want to read back not the application, the motion, please.
Okay, I did my best writing this down. Okay, so I wasn't sure if this was a part of it, but to continue, or maybe that was just me writing a note, to continue for the April meeting, revise application, addressing the setbacks and survey of the property, and have zoning staff, I guess, inquire to the fire chief to comment on the property.
Yeah, we want to check both the rear and side yard clearances. We want the applicant to survey both the rear and side yard to see where he is.
Side yard. Okay, and then after all of that, have the applicant get a building permit.
That's up to him with the township or the county, I guess.
Okay.
But we want to address that this is going to become a use variance, and we want to be able to put some conditions on it, right, Ken?
Yes.
Mr. Patel, do you understand what we're asking?
Yes.
Okay, if there's any question, you can feel free to contact our zoning inspectors, Harley or Rich.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, just real quick. Ken made the motion. I don't think it's been seconded yet.
Right, I was just clearing it up here before.
Okay.
All right, the motion's been made, clarified, and if someone want to second it?
I'll second.
Dave? All right, thank you, Dave. All right, Rachel, if you call the roll, please.
Okay, Ken?
Yes.
Okay, Dave and Zara?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
And Chairman?
Yes. Okay. All right, Mr. Patel, I hope you understand that. If not, just make sure you contact Harley or Rich at the township office, and they'll let you know what needs to be done before the next meeting, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, we will close the public hearing, open the regular meeting. Rich, do you have anything? We'll just acknowledge the minutes. Does anyone see any error in the minutes or anything that needs to be added or deleted from the minutes from our last meeting?
No.
They're good.
Pretty much all we did was elect the officers again. So with no changes or anything, if someone would like to make a motion to approve them as submitted,
So moved.
that was Randy.
This is Randy.
Okay. Someone want to second that, please?
I'll second.
Okay, Rachel, do you have that?
Yes.
If you'll
Okay.
call the roll, please.
Okay. Dave and Zara,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
and Chairman.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, under old business, I don't think we have any. Rich or Harley, any new business that you know of?
Nothing too much new. We're going to have at least one application to consider for next month. That will be a conditional use permit at the old Sam and Tommy's. Once again, it's under new ownership, and you know, the new owners intend to operate it very similarly to the way it's been used in the past. So uh, nothing major going on there.
That's the one they put the deck and everything on in the back and side? Out on,
They're working on it. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, they're doing a lot of work over there. I've noticed going by.
good. All right, I'm glad to hear that that property is they're gonna go ahead with that storage area over there. I hadn't heard anything about that, so that was a very attractive building that they proposed to us.
Mhm.
Which one?
The one across from Patriarcha's office there.
Oh, okay.
Mrs.
Safe
Subaru.
store.
Yeah,
Yeah,
next to
Big.
right.
Dairy Queen.
Yeah, that project should be. They should be able to break ground any time now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, as far as I know, they've got all their zoning ducks in order, and they may have a couple things to touch up with the building department and some of the county departments, but they're in pretty good shape. They're on top of things. They've been really good to deal with.
That's good. Glad to hear it. Okay, and before we do close the meeting, Harley and Rachel, if you reach out to the board prior to next meeting, let's just kind of get a feel if we want to go back to the hall. You know, we're going to be another month into vaccinations and everything, kind of see how things are shaking out. If people feel better about it, maybe we can get back there in person again. And if someone doesn't want to go, you know, you can just come in virtually. So let's look at that prior to the next meeting.
When I offered to the zoning commission at last night's meeting, when I go to send out the digital copies, and kind of get a quorum, that email that I send, like a week, 2 weeks
Yeah.
prior, if you guys want to let me know when you respond, if you're going to be in person or not.
Okay, then we can just feel it out there. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, we have enough time for the letting people know. Do they need to know if it's going to be virtual or live? I guess they don't need to know that till towards the end, do they?
Mr. Chairman, maybe I should share with you at last night's zoning commission meeting, the zoning commission decided to open their meetings to in-person attendance at town hall for the commission members only, and still allow the public to participate electronically, plus any members of the commission or staff who wish to participate electronically instead of in person. So it's kind of like a halfway step. The trustees, it is my understanding, have opened their meetings to the public. I'm not quite sure how they're going to monitor numbers and things like that at this point. But they did state that it will be up to the zoning commission and the board of zoning appeals to set their own standards for how they want to proceed.
Okay. We've been doing this long enough. I think we get a feel of attendance by what our agenda is. And if we've got this case as a continuance and one more case next month, I think we can assume that there could be very good social distancing, and if there's 2 or 3 people show up. So again, we'll look and see where we are 3 weeks from now and make that call then, if the board's okay with that.
Fine.
We need to start being trendsetters and get this country back where it needs to be, I think.
Yep.
As long as we don't go to jail. We'll see. All right, if no one has anything else, we'll adjourn this meeting.
I've
And
got
thanks everybody for attending. Harley,
I've
thank
got
you
one
for,
question
yes,
for. Okay, so since this case was continued, hopefully for the April meeting,
yes.
do I need to drop I don't need to drop the file off yet to town hall, correct?
Rich
Correct.
or Harley?
Correct.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you.
All
Okay.
right. No other questions? All right, thanks everybody. Have a great spring. It's going to be spring pretty soon. 70 tomorrow, so let's enjoy it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I
Yes.
appreciate
Well,
everybody. All right.
happy Easter to everybody, because
Yeah.
it'll be after Easter when we get back together.
Wow.
That's right.
Hope the bunny.
Happy
Right.
St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, St. Patty's, the big parade in the
There we
township
go. That's important too.
next
Yes.
Monday. I think the township parade.
I
Yeah,
saw that. I saw the
Corned
sign.
beef and beer. Is that what they say?
beer and corned beef. I think.
Yes,
Oh,
Yep.
that's right.
okay.
Order
Priorities.
is important.
Let
That
me
order.
get my
Right.
priorities in order.
Green
All right,
beer.
thanks
All
everybody.
right. So
All right.
long.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good night,
Good night,
Good
everybody.
everybody. Stay safe.
night. Where did the mouse go? Shoot. Fighting with it.